On a rain-swept afternoon in November 1971, a quiet man in a dark suit boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 in Portland, Oregon. He carried a black attaché case and purchased his $20 ticket under the name Dan Cooper. To the flight attendants, he appeared utterly unremarkable, a business traveler settling in for a short, routine journey to Seattle. But within minutes of takeoff, he would hand a handwritten note to a flight attendant, initiating the most audacious and unprecedented skyjacking in American history. How did a lone man hijack a commercial airliner, extort a fortune, and vanish without a trace into the freezing night sky? The immediate reality of the crime unfolded with chilling politeness. Florence Schaffner, a 23-year-old flight attendant, initially assumed the note handed to her was a lonely passenger's phone number. She slipped it unread into her pocket. The man leaned closer, his voice calm and measured, advising her to look at the paper. It stated he had a bomb in his briefcase and demanded she sit beside him. The terror of the situation was entirely contained within a few square feet of the Boeing 727 cabin, invisible to the rest of the unsuspecting passengers. Opening his attaché case just enough for Schaffner to see, Cooper revealed a terrifying apparatus. Inside were 8 red cylinders connected by wires to a large cylindrical battery. According to official FBI reports, the device appeared to be a functional explosive, establishing a credible and immediate threat. The modus operandi, or method of operation, was brilliantly simple: total control through the silent promise of mutually assured destruction. The demands were relayed to the cockpit and then to the ground. Cooper required $200,000 in negotiable American currency, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the aircraft upon arrival. The FBI and local law enforcement scrambled to assemble the ransom money, drawing funds from several Seattle area banks. They meticulously photographed the serial numbers of $10,000 $20 bills, hoping to create a traceable financial trail. Meanwhile, the passengers on Flight 305 sat in ignorance, told only that their arrival in Seattle would be delayed due to a minor mechanical difficulty. The psychological burden rested entirely on the flight crew, who were forced to maintain a facade of normalcy, while a man with a bomb dictated their fate. This silent hostage situation lasted for 2 agonizing hours as the plane circled Puget Sound, waiting for the authorities to meet the demands. Upon landing in Seattle, the exchange occurred seamlessly. Cooper allowed the 36 passengers and 2 flight attendants to disembark in exchange for the ransom money and the parachutes. The aircraft was refueled, and Cooper outlined his next set of highly specific instructions to the remaining crew. They were to fly toward Mexico City at an altitude of 10,000 feet, with the landing gear deployed, the wing flaps lowered to 15 degrees, and the cabin unpressurized. These flight parameters were highly unusual and demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of the Boeing 727. The specific speed of 150 knots and the unpressurized cabin were essential for what Cooper planned next. The aircraft's unique design featured an aft air stair, a set of stairs that could be lowered from the tail section while in flight. Cooper knew this, a detail that baffled investigators and suggested specialized aviation or military knowledge. Somewhere over the dense, rugged wilderness of southwestern Washington, the flight crew noticed a sudden change in air pressure. A warning light illuminated in the cockpit, indicating that the aft stairs had been deployed. It was approximately 8:13 in the evening. The freezing rain whipped through the open cabin door. D.B. Cooper, clutching the ransom money and wearing 2 parachutes, stepped off the aft stairs and into the pitch-black void of a raging storm. The immediate aftermath was a scramble of military and civilian resources. 2 F-106 fighter jets had been tailing the commercial airliner, but due to the poor visibility and the sheer size of the storm, neither pilot saw a parachute deploy. When the Boeing 727 finally landed safely in Reno, Nevada, with the aft stairs dragging on the runway, the cabin was empty. The skyjacker had vanished, leaving behind only 2 parachutes, his black clip-on tie, and an enduring mystery. The manhunt that followed was one of the most extensive and frustrating in FBI history. The search area encompassed hundreds of square miles of treacherous terrain, dense forests, deep ravines, and freezing rivers. The weather conditions on the night of the jump were so severe that survival seemed highly improbable. The wind chill would have been lethal, and landing safely in a forested mountainous region in total darkness bordered on the impossible. Yet, no body was found. The meticulous grid searches yielded nothing. The primary physical evidence left behind was the clip-on tie and a mother-of-pearl tie clip. In the decades that followed, forensic analysts would extract microscopic particles from the tie, including pure titanium, bismuth, and aluminum. These rare elements suggested Cooper may have worked in a specialized manufacturing or chemical plant, perhaps tied to the aerospace industry. The profile of the phantom criminal began to take shape, though it remained maddeningly vague. He was described as a white male in his mid-40s, between 5 feet 10 and 6 feet tall, with a calm, intelligent demeanor. The FBI investigated over 1,000 suspects. Some were seasoned criminals, others were former paratroopers, and a few were quiet family men whose sudden wealth or unexplained absences raised suspicions. Despite the massive influx of tips and the forensic scrutiny, every lead eventually hit a dead end. The serial numbers of the ransom money were distributed to banks, casinos, and businesses nationwide, but not a single bill surfaced in circulation. It was as if the earth had swallowed the man and the fortune whole. The lack of trace evidence fueled a growing belief among law enforcement that Cooper had not survived the jump. Then, nearly 9 years later, the earth surrendered a singular, tantalizing clue. In February 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging a fire pit on the sandy banks of the Columbia River at a place called Tina Bar. Beneath the surface, he uncovered 3 bundles of severely degraded $20 bills. The rubber bands had long since perished, but the bills were still arranged in the same order they were given to the Skyjacker. The FBI quickly confirmed that the serial numbers on the decaying currency matched the ransom money. The total amount recovered was $5,800. This discovery was a monumental breakthrough, yet it only deepened the confusion. Tina Bar was miles away from the calculated drop zone. How did the money get there? Was it washed downriver by currents, or had Cooper buried it there himself? Geologists and hydrologists were brought in to analyze the sediment layers where the money was found. Their findings suggested the bills had not been deposited on the riverbank until at least 1974, 3 years after the skyjacking. This geological anomaly introduced a maddening contradiction. If Cooper died in the jump, how did a portion of the ransom money arrive at Tina Bar years later? The evidence refused to form a coherent narrative. Over the decades, several compelling suspects emerged to fill the void. Richard McCoy, a former Green Beret and avid skydiver, executed a nearly identical skyjacking just 5 months after Cooper. He demanded $500,000 and bailed out over Utah. McCoy was captured and later killed in a shootout with law enforcement, but the FBI ultimately ruled him out as Cooper, citing physical discrepancies and an ironclad alibi, or verified proof of presence elsewhere for the night of the original crime. Another prominent name was Robert Rackstraw, a highly decorated military pilot with a history of criminal behavior and a penchant for deception. Rackstraw possessed the exact skill set required to survive the jump and had a physical resemblance to the composite sketches. Despite intense investigative scrutiny and documentary investigations pointing in his direction, no definitive proof ever linked him to the crime. Rackstraw denied being Cooper until his death. The families of the suspects, the flight crew, and the investigators themselves were all profoundly affected by the enduring shadow of the case. For the flight attendants, the trauma of that night remained a quiet, lifelong companion. For the FBI agents who dedicated their careers to the case, the failure to identify Cooper was a source of professional frustration, a puzzle missing its final crucial piece. The impact of the crime extended far beyond the individuals involved. It permanently altered the landscape of commercial aviation. In direct response to the incident, the Federal Aviation Administration mandated the installation of a mechanical aerodynamic wedge on all Boeing 727 aircraft. This device, officially named the Cooper vane, physically prevented the aft stairs from being lowered during flight, ensuring that this specific method of escape could never be replicated. Security protocols were fundamentally rewritten. The era of walking onto an airplane without luggage checks or metal detectors vanished overnight. The skyjacking catalyzed the modern airport security apparatus, a lasting legacy of a man who exploited the innocent trust of early commercial air travel. The phantom thief inadvertently made the skies safer for everyone who followed. In 2016, after 45 years of chasing shadows, the FBI officially redirected resources away from the active investigation of the case. The staggering volume of files, tips, and physical evidence was preserved for historical record, but the active pursuit was suspended. The agency acknowledged that unless new definitive physical evidence emerged, the identity of the man who jumped into the storm would remain unsolved. The suspension of the official case only intensified the efforts of amateur sleuths and citizen investigators. Independent scientists continue to analyze the microscopic particles on the tie, searching for a definitive chemical signature that might point to a specific factory or laboratory in 1971. The search for the remaining $194,000 continues in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, driven by the hope of uncovering a parachute or a skeletal remain. The mythos of the skyjacker has transcended the crime itself. He became an anti-hero of American folklore, a symbol of rebellion against the system who executed a victimless crime and beat the odds. But this romanticized view obscures the reality of the terror inflicted on the flight crew and the massive, costly mobilization of law enforcement. The true narrative is one of a desperate, dangerous gamble that left a permanent scar on aviation history. The disappearance remains an open wound in the annals of criminal history. Did he perish in the freezing rain, swallowed by the unforgiving wilderness, his bones resting beneath decades of pine needles? Or did he walk away, melting back into society with a stolen fortune, watching his own legend grow from the quiet safety of an ordinary life? The wind over the Cascade Mountains holds the answer, and it refuses to speak.